I'll now formally start the webinar. Thank you for joining our Law Week webinar. Happy Law Week, everyone. This webinar is part of our Lunch and the Law series for New South Wales Law Week. Law Week is an annual festival about creating access to justice and understanding the legal system, the role of lawyers and other services across Australia, actually. And today I am joining from Camaragal country, and I pay my respect to elders, past and present, and acknowledge that Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first storytellers on this land, educators on this land, and lawmakers. And I acknowledge the lands that we are all joining from today across New South Wales and Queensland and Victoria. So welcome to everyone. As I mentioned, we are talking about the law in New South Wales, so it might be a little bit different in other states, but we'll touch on that if we can. This presentation is general information only, so it's not giving you individual legal advice, but we will tell you where you can go to get legal advice at a later date or legal information. One place in New South Wales is called Law Access New South Wales. So that's available through chat on the Legal Aid New South Wales website or 1300 888 529. So we'll give you more information about that at the end of the webinar as well. So I will now introduce our speakers for this webinar. We have Nerida, who is a senior lawyer at Legal Aid New South Wales. And we have John, who is from New South Wales Fair Trading. So they are our experts on this topic today, which is second-hand cars or second-hand vehicles and the law. I just also wanted to do a quick shout out to anyone who is joining from one of our partners today, libraries across New South Wales. I think we might have some libraries streaming this webinar. So thank you for joining today. I hope that everyone can learn something interesting and new and useful. If you or someone you know is considering buying a second-hand vehicle, we know a lot of people are these days, especially with everything getting more expensive. It's a really important topic to be aware of and know your rights. And I think when preparing this, I definitely learned some new things. So I think we all will today. So as I mentioned, my name is Natalie. I'm from the Community Legal Education team at Legal Aid, and I will be checking what questions are coming through and sort of facilitating this session, but I will now hand over to Nerida and John. So our first topic, we're starting off very positively or importantly, what can go wrong when buying a second-hand car? I think, John, you're going first.
Yeah, g'day. Hello, everyone. Yeah, there's quite a few things that can go wrong, obviously. You might take on someone else's problems, essentially. There could be money owing on the vehicle. It could have been in an accident repair, have had a considerable accident damage that's been unprofessionally repaired in the past. You may even find the odometer had been wound back and concealed by a previous owner. So there are lots of things to look out for and beware regarding buying used cars. And if you're buying privately, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, it's buyer beware, because there's very little support we can offer you there. We operate predominantly in matters that the cars that have been sold through licensed motor dealers. So we would urge people to consider that prior to considering buying a private sale used car, because there are very few protections under the law there available.
Yeah, just on that note, John, maybe if you can also tell us a bit more about your role at New South Wales Fair Trading and how you work in this area.
Yeah, sure. So the auto team works to ensure a fair and compliant automotive marketplace in New South Wales. So our team of inspectors engagement and complaints representatives and officers are located all over New South Wales and work to address inquiries and resolve disputes that relate to motor vehicles, purchases, repairs, dealer guarantees, warranty disputes. And where a trader hasn't met their legislative responsibilities, the team have a range of regulatory options available, such as education, investigation, or for more serious matters, compliance action. So we start out by mediating between the parties. We can send inspectors out to conduct on-site inspections of particular vehicles. And off the back of that, we can issue rectification orders, infringement notices in some circumstances, and conduct license checks. There's some of the other things the auto unit are involved in. We handle all odometer related matters, ministerial complaints, assess compensation fund claims relating to the Motor Dealer Repairers Act. We provide technical advice, education, and we also engage with industry and policy makers.
Thanks, John. And I think I also forgot to introduce our other participants today, who are Tyson and Therese, who are our Auslan interpreters. So thank you for joining us today as well. We have had a question, but I'm going to come back to that after we hear from Nerida. Did you have any opening comments, Nerida, I guess, on your role? How does legal aid help in this area? And also, what do you see about what can go wrong?
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Natalie. So Legal Aid New South Wales is a statewide independent government agency. And as you alluded to, Legal Aid New South Wales can provide legal information by the telephone or by the website through Law Access. And Legal Aid New South Wales also has lawyers who can provide legal advice and representation in courts and tribunals to people who are eligible for legal aid. And eligibility depends on the type of legal issue and the person's circumstances, including their means. So in that context, somebody with a problem with a second-hand car at a minimum can get some legal information via Law Access, or possibly some legal advice and possibly some representation through Legal Aid New South Wales. There's 25 offices throughout New South Wales. I am a senior solicitor in the Civil Law Division of Legal Aid, the other two being the Crime Division and the Family Law Division. And most specifically, I am in the Consumer Law team. So I give advice and assistance and representation to people with consumer disputes about goods and services, like faulty second-hand cars, as well as consumer credit and insurance. I agree with what John said about what can go wrong when buying a second-hand car. And I mean, the most common problem that we see relate to mechanical problems with the vehicle, that it is usually okay when the person buys it, but then a problem develops that can either be repaired, or in some cases, the car is no longer able to operate. We also talk with people who've fallen into difficulty with their car loan. Perhaps they're in financial hardship and they can't make the loan repayments. And of course, as John said, you have a greater array of remedies if you've bought the car from a car dealer or someone operating in the course of a business selling cars, as opposed to a private sale. Yeah.
Thanks, Nerida. I've just got one question that's related to what we've been talking about, a question for John about how do we know or find out if any tampering has been done to a car?
That's a good question. One easy way to check is off the Service New South Wales website. That records the last 3 odometer readings that vehicle had recorded, but I do stress that is not over a period of 3 years. We have seen some dealers, or not only dealers, but predominantly private sellers, have repeat 3 registration checks done in short periods of time to conceal that odometer tampering. So it'll only record the last 3. So if they're going to wind, say, 100,000 kilometres off the odometer, you would need 3 pink slip inspections to remove that from being visible off the web, off the Service New South Wales app. So I would say that any cases where they're looking at buying a used car and those odometer readings records are in a short period of time, that would raise a red flag, and they should look further into that or consider whether it's just as easy to find another vehicle which has got a cleaner history. Another way that they can identify the odometer tampering is they take the car into a licensed motor vehicle repairer. In most cases, most vehicles, the odometer reading, while the original reading, while not displayed on the dash, is recorded in the car's electronic control units. And when some diagnostic equipment is connected to the car, the original reading is apparent. So that varies widely on different makes and models, but that's generally speaking, that's available on most modern vehicles.
Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful information. And we've got a little demo later on about the check that you were talking about. We have another question about NCAT, but we're coming to that later when we talk about what to do if something goes wrong. So we'll come back to that question later. What I'm going to do now, so after thank you for that introduction, it sets the scene about what we're all looking for. We've got a video that is from New South Wales Fair Trading. And I'm going to play the video. You should be able to hear the sound. It's only 2 minutes long. If you have selected closed captions on your Zoom, the captions should come up with the video. So hopefully everyone can see or read along with the video. Okay. I will play that now.
So, you're looking to buy a used car? Well, that's exciting. But it can be a little scary, right? I mean, it is a lot of money, and what if you get it wrong? But don't you worry. Follow these steps from the team at New South Wales Fair Trading to minimize risks and give yourself some confidence when buying a used car. So, let's kick it off. Start with research. Think about your needs. Do you need a small car for city driving or a larger vehicle for family trips? It's also important to consider running costs like fuel, maintenance, and insurance. You can buy from a dealership, at an auction, or from a private seller. Licensed dealers do offer consumer guarantees. However, auctions and private sales don't, so keep that in mind. Watch out for red flags in ads. Things like urgent sale or cash only or no inspection should make you think twice. If the sale seems too good to be true, check the vehicle registration online for free. Closely inspect the odometer readings, the dates they've been recorded, and make sure the registration matches with the vehicle make, model, and year. Read the contract carefully and make sure it has everything you've agreed on, and don't leave any blanks. Financing through a dealer, you may have a short cooling off period. In New South Wales, if you buy a car from a licensed dealership, you get up to a 3 months or 5,000 kilometre dealer guarantee. That's basically a warranty. If the car is less than 10 years old or has under 160,000 kilometres on it. Private sales and older cars may not be covered, so always check. Something wrong with the car? Contact the dealership in the first instance to see if they can offer a solution or inspect the problem. If you can't resolve the issues with the business directly, contact New South Wales Fair Trading for help. For private sales, you may need to seek legal advice.
Thank you. Thanks, John. I really like that video.
Can't take any credit for that.
You can't. Yeah, it's good when governments have videos that are a bit interesting, a bit fun, but also informative. Okay, so what we're talking about now is, I guess, preventing problems from occurring. before we talk about what to do if something goes wrong. So to prevent problems, what are some things you should do before buying a car? And we heard in the video there's different things to look for if you're buying from a licensed dealer or privately. So I'm just going to turn to John. Are you going first, talking about what to look for before you buy?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing to do would be, before you go out shopping, would be to consider your needs, your lifestyle and your budget, and try and be realistic with that. And if you're considering buying an electric vehicle, you need to think about how and where you will charge it. So there are some strata owners, operators have restrictions on not being able to charge electric vehicles in shared car parks and the like. So you need to check your own circumstances of where you live and find out if you're able to charge your vehicle on site. If not, that's going to present some complications for you potentially. You need to consider whether you want to buy the car through a dealership, or if you're really considering a private sale or an online auction. You need to be aware of the lack of protections there if you, as we mentioned earlier, if you're considering a private sale. The other thing you need to think about is have a good look at is some motor dealers will offer extended warranty periods that you have to purchase, and you need to have a really good look at the terms and conditions attached to those, because it's not a blanket coverage. In most cases, there's dollar limits on certain areas of the car to repair. For example, an engine fault might be $1,000, which is obviously not going to get you very far if there's an engine failure. So you need to weigh up carefully the cost of that warranty versus the benefit if you need to make a claim, and whether it's actually worthwhile taking that out at all. You also need to look at, if you're looking at finance through the dealer, recommend you don't waive your right to a cooling off period. So you don't sign on the dotted line. You would go home and think about it, sleep on it overnight. You can always come back tomorrow, and that will stay open for you for a period of 24 hours. So they're just some of the things. And if you're not savvy on cars or mechanically minded, would certainly consider factoring budgeting for an independent mechanical inspection to be done on the car before you buy it, by your trusted repairer or mechanic, somebody independent from the sale. They'll give you a good assessment on the condition of that car you're looking at. So just think about the cost of factoring that cost in. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, that's a very good tip. Thank you, John. Nerida, do you have anything from your experience of what you see, of what people should think about before they buy?
Well, it is preferable, if you can, to buy from a licensed car dealer, or at least a business selling cars. There are pitfalls with a private sale, not least of which is your remedies if things go wrong are limited. It is, as John said, very wise to look at getting finance separate from the car dealer, perhaps having your finance approved before you go so that you know what your budget is. Beware of high pressure sales tactics. Don't feel that you have to sign the contract on the day. Take the contract away and read it. It is very difficult to get out of a contract once you've signed it, if you've just changed your mind or you have buyer's remorse. It's not simply a straightforward matter of just simply going back and saying, I've changed my mind. I don't want to go through with this anymore. Also, be aware if you pay a deposit, have a look at what the terms and conditions are about getting your deposit back. And yes, if you can take someone with you who knows a lot about cars to have a good look at it, or pay for an independent inspection of the vehicle, is always useful. And obviously, if you're buying it from a licensed dealer, you can be confident that there's no money owing on it. But if you're buying it privately, don't take the assurance of the person selling it that it is unencumbered you ought to do your own check. And if there is money owing on the vehicle, don't buy it. Just walk away. And again, I can't emphasize enough the point that John made. If they're a genuine car dealer and there's genuinely cars for sale, you could come back the next day and there will still be a car to buy. You don't have to buy on the spot there and then. That's where we see people falling into difficulties, not of their making, but yeah, that's probably all from me for before you buy.
Thanks. And at Legal Aid in general, when signing contracts, we say it's very important to understand what you're signing. And if English is not your first language, you should be asking someone to help you with understanding the contract.
Look, that's right. And that someone shouldn't be the car dealer. And, you know, the font, the size of the print on the contract is tiny. There's numerous clauses. It takes quite a while to read them all. So take the contract away with you and read it really carefully, and then come back and decide whether you want to sign it or not. And yes, if you have difficulty reading it, find someone that you trust that's independent of the sales process to help you read it. Yeah.
Thanks, Nerida. Okay, so the next slide is about knowing your rights. We are going to be talking about private sales and auctions, trade-ins, dealer guarantees and warranties, time limits. Whoops. Okay, so your rights in these areas. Nerida, are you starting with this?
Yes, I think I am. So, look, this is one for the people, if they're still listening in from outside New South Wales, because the Australian consumer law applies throughout Australia. This is the consumer legislation that really offers, in many ways, the best protection for consumers when they are buying goods and services in New South Wales and, as I said, throughout Australia. The Australian consumer law contains a set of guarantees which cannot be contracted out of by the supplier, and the principal guarantee that offers the best protection to an individual, a consumer buying from a trader, so someone operating in the course of business, is the guarantee that the goods you buy are of acceptable quality, which means they're fit for the purpose, they're safe, they're durable, and they're free from defects. As has previously been said, however, those consumer guarantees about acceptable quality don't apply if you purchase your second-hand car from a private individual, private sale, or if you purchase your car via an auction. So all the more reason to be extra aware of what you're doing and what you are buying if it's a private sale or if it's by auction, particularly those auctions where you've got no opportunity to inspect the vehicle and the terms and conditions are you take it as is. But if you buy from a licensed car dealer or someone just who's operating in the course of selling cars, you have the protections of the Australian consumer law, which operate in addition to any dealer guarantee or dealer warranty, whether it's the statutory warranty or whether it's the warranty that you've purchased in addition, which, as John alluded to, is often not as good value as what people think it is. So there are time limits that apply for you to seek remedies under these consumer guarantees under the Australian consumer law, whether it's in a tribunal or a court. We can talk about that a little more later. In relation to trade-ins, I would just speak from my perspective as a lawyer. Where we see people getting into difficulty with trade-ins is where they've either misunderstood or, again, those sharp sales practices have come into play about the amount of money the car dealer is offering for the trade-in. That's something that you ought to make clear before you sign the contract, that the figure on the contract is the figure that you've agreed as the amount for your trade-in. And when it comes to dealer guarantees and dealer warranties, if you fit within the dealer guarantee and the dealer warranty, then that can offer you a rather effective and immediate solution if there's a problem with your vehicle. And as I said, with the time limits, I'm happy probably to talk about those at the end when we talk about going to court or a tribunal in terms of the Australian consumer law. Yeah, that's probably all I'd say at the moment, unless anyone's got a question. I think.
Not on this topic. John, did you have anything else about people understanding their rights?
What I would say is just do a little bit of research and compare what the trade-in price you're being offered is, what the market value of your car is, and you can do that via a car sales website. Check for like vehicle and condition kilometres. Obviously, the dealer is going to offer you less money because he or she are only going to be paying wholesale price, not market price. But if they're offering you 20% of the price that you see in comparable cars for sale, you need to consider whether you're better off not trading your car in and selling it privately yourself, because you'd be better off financially. You're less out of pocket. And yeah, the other thing I'd like to remind people is if they're going to take a trade-in, considering a trade-in, particularly with taking dealer finance, don't leave your car there and take the new vehicle home until you're very happy with it and the deal's done and dusted and signed and agreed upon. So just make sure that you take your vehicle home, and I'd urge people to sleep on that decision overnight, regardless of whatever sales tactics are being thrown at you. There's always, in almost every occasion, there's plenty of vehicles for sale, whether it's from a different retailer or even the same. Don't be pressured into buying on the spot, because that's only benefiting the dealer, not the consumer.
There are definitely some good themes emerging about what to especially look out for. Okay, so that's people's understanding your rights around buying a secondhand vehicle. Now we'll go into the really practical side, which I think we've touched on before, and the video touched on as well, about how do you practically check the vehicle that you'd like to buy. So what are the checks? So John, I think you've already mentioned some of these, but I'll just go through the list just to remind people as well. And there's a very important one people might not know of at the bottom there, the Personal Property Securities Register search. Thanks, John. Do you want to talk through what checks you can do before buying?
Yeah, sure. So the PPSR check is what I would recommend you do before you even leave home. You only need some vehicle identifiers to do that. And in relation to buying a car, it's the best $2 you'll ever spend. It'll tell you straight away whether the car's had an odometer windback, whether it recorded against it, whether it's been a repairable write-off in the past, whether there's money owing on the car. And that's a certificate that'll be presented, can be printed off and take with you. And it's very cheap insurance. So after you've got the PPSR check out of the way, and you go out to the yard, if, as I'd said previously, strongly urge people who aren't mechanically savvy to budget for an independent mechanical inspection of that car to get a good handle on what repairs are going to be required in the short to medium term. I'd be checking the vehicle's service history in the logbook and just make sure that tallies up with what the odometer reading is. If the odometer reading says 150,000 kilometres, but it's got service, the logbook's been stamped up to 250,000, obviously there's a problem there. And I'll be walking away in that situation. So after you've done all those checks and even a visual inspection, you're happy with that there's no unrepaired damage and the body and paint work are in good order, you can take the vehicle for a test drive. But just, I know it's it's hard in some circumstances, but try not to have the rose-coloured glasses on and be fairly realistic and practical, whether you can live with that particular car on a day-to-day basis, whether it's going to suit your needs and your particular circumstances, and very importantly, whether you can afford it. Because there's nothing worse than having buyer's remorse. And as Nerida said, it's very hard to reverse your way out of that after you've signed a contract.
Thanks, John. Nerida, did you have anything else to add about those checks?
No, absolutely. When John was talking about don't leave your car there if you're trading it in, absolutely. We have had examples of people doing that and then, yes, being unable to then take their car back, and it's really, really problematic. So don't leave your trade-in car there until you have absolutely finalized the contract and you understand what you are doing, and definitely do the PPSR search. I know a lot of people, when they sell privately, part of the ad they put up is often a copy of the PPSR search. So that's a good start. You ought to do it yourself. Definitely, because if the car is under finance and the finance company locate the vehicle and it's parked in the street, they can come and take it. They can come and take it, and you are left standing there with no car, having handed over a considerable sum of money to the private seller. So, yeah.
So, Nerida, we had a question about how do we find whether a car is subject to a charge or a loan taken by the seller against the vehicle? So that's what we're talking about. That's the PPSR check.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. Just going back to the licensed dealers, we've got a question about whether there's any difference between buying from a manufacturer-owned store, like I've seen driving along, there's the Toyota secondhand cars or whatever, or there's an independent secondhand car dealership that sells a whole different range of cars. Is there any difference there?
No, they're all bound by the same rules and regulations.
So licensed dealers.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks for clarifying that. All right, I think there's some, really good tips there. Oh, vehicle history check. You also went through that. I just didn't click on it, I think. This is a little demo of what we've been talking about. This is the check you can do from Service New South Wales. I think it just runs through the demonstration. Did you just want to talk through what's happening there, maybe, John, while the little screen recording is going?
Yes, it's very simple. You can do that off the app on the phone or on your computer, and it will. We only need the registration number, and it will show the last 3 recorded odometer readings. So as you can see with this example, the readings are about a year apart, which doesn't raise any suspicion, and the readings are incrementing on each occasion. So that would be okay. But if you did see those readings recorded, for example, in 3 consecutive months, with only very small increments in the reading, that would be suspicious.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank
And
you.
that's a completely free check that you can check any vehicle as long as you've got the registration plate.
Wow. Okay. These are excellent tips. Thank you. All right. So now we are moving to once you've bought a used vehicle, what happens then? I'm just going to click through the different topics that we'll be talking about motor vehicle stamp duty, transferring the registration, and what else to consider, like insurance. So, John, are you going to talk to this one first?
Yep, sure. So the transfer fee, when you transfer the registration to your name, if it's a private sale, you go into a Service New South Wales centre. Depending on your status, whether you're entitled to a concession or not, you will pay a stamp duty, which is a percentage of the purchase price of the vehicle, or its market value, whichever is the highest. There is also a registration fee, transfer fee component to that. That is to get the car registered in your name. So if you're buying a $50,000 car, for example, that stamp duty could well be a couple of $1,000s or more. So that's something else that we should have mentioned earlier, needs to be considered into and do your maths at the beginning, whether you can afford that expense as well. and would strongly urge you to consider taking out some other type of insurance, whether that's comprehensive, which is the most common, or third-party property damage. Because the CTP insurance, which is part of the registration, does not cover any vehicle damage. It only covers personal injury to other occupants of vehicles. So yeah, you're really quite risky there if you don't at least consider taking out some type of insurance there to protect yourself and your liability. If you run up the back of someone else in traffic, you're liable for all the repair costs to their vehicle. In a lot of cases, you've got very little control over that. The panel beaters could issue a quote for $20,000 or $30,000 in some cases, and you'll have to pay that. So the way to protect yourself there is to at least have third-party property damage insurance.
I think insurance and driving could be a whole other webinar one day.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Nerida, did you have anything to add to these steps once you've bought a used vehicle?
No, just to absolutely reiterate, at a minimum, third-party property insurance. I've given advice to more than one person who's crashed into a Rolls-Royce. Their car was worth not a great deal of money, but the respective Rolls-Royces that they crashed into were. So you never know, but if you've got the at least third-party property insurance, then I think you're doing the best you can to protect yourself if you can't afford comprehensive insurance. Yeah.
Thanks, Nerida. And just before we move on to what to do if things go wrong, just someone was curious about the Service New South Wales check. How did they get the odometer readings? Where did they come from? Is that when a car's serviced, or how are those done?
That's off its e-safety check, so it's annual registration check. But anyone's free to have those checks done at any time from any authorised examiner, of which most independent repairers are. So you could take your car in there and get them to do a roadworthiness check, and then that reading gets recorded in the database, and that's what appears on the website for Service New South Wales.
And sorry, one other question about the checks before we move on. Does Service New South Wales do checks before transferring the ownership to see whether there's a loan on it, or that's very much the owner's or the purchaser's responsibility?
Yeah, it's a purchaser's responsibility.
Yeah. So the transferring the registration, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. This slide, we don't have information on the slide, but we're just going to talk about what we can do. What are our options if things go wrong? So I think, John, what do you suggest in situations like this? And what are some examples of what can go wrong?
Well, the first thing you do is try and talk to the seller, whether that's a dealer or a private sale, and you start off nice and calm, and you, without being aggressive in any way, and just clearly point out what the problems are and what you're hoping to achieve from the outcome. Some cases that's obviously not going to be successful. Other cases you may have some success. So where you bought from a licensed dealer and they're not prepared to assist you with your complaint, you are able to, your issue, you are able to make a complaint to Fair Trading, which we can then provide further assistance with. In some cases, Fair Trading isn't able to enforce an outcome. So if you're wanting a refund, that would have to go to the to a court or a tribunal. Normally it would be NCAT, the Civil Administrative Tribunal, and that is certainly the case for all private sales, is where you'll be directed to take your matter to, which you'd have to prepare some evidence. You may need to obtain expert mechanical reports, and the tribunal member will make a decision one way or the other and provide some binding rulings there, whether the car is to be returned for a full refund or otherwise. Of course, then you can also speak to legal aid.
So especially if someone's bought through a private sale, that's not something New South Wales Fair Trading can assist with.
In most cases, no.
Mm.
No.
So then they could contact Law Access New South Wales to get some legal information. So Nerida, what do you suggest? What are some steps if things can go wrong? And I think this is when we're going to talk about someone had questions about NCAT.
Yes. So yes, following on from what John said, absolutely. If you've bought from a car dealer or someone who's in the business of selling cars, so not a private sale, go back to the supplier to see if you can get a remedy. You may be within, if you've got one of the statutory warranty, you might be within that warranty period, and that might be your the solution. Or you've purchased the more extended warranty, which may or may not be good value, but in your situation, it might cover the cost of the repair that you are seeking. If that doesn't result in the outcome that you want, if the car dealer says there really is nothing wrong with the car, we're not going to pay to get it repaired, or we're not going to refund your money because it can't be repaired, we don't accept what you're saying, then definitely complain to Fair Trading, who might be able to mediate a solution. But if that's not successful, then in New South Wales, it's NCAT, New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal. If you're in Victoria, it's VCAT. If you're in Queensland, it's QCAT. It's the same principle. So these tribunals, though, can only deal with disputes between a consumer and a trader. So you can't take your dispute with a private seller to, certainly not to NCAT in New South Wales. And I think it's probably the same in VCAT and QCAT. You have to go to court if you're in dispute with a private seller. You can't go to NCAT. But if you're in dispute with a car dealer, then you can make an application to NCAT. There's a time limit. You need to make your application to NCAT within 3 years of discovering the problem. And depending on the nature of the problem, whether it can be repaired or not, will depend on the remedy that you get. If it needs to be repaired, then the car dealer might be ordered to go and undertake the repair at their expense, or you choose the repairer and they meet the cost. If the problem with the vehicle is so significant that it can't be repaired, and in fact, the vehicle effectively should never have been sold to you in the first place because it was far from being of acceptable quality when it was sold to you, then you might be able to get an order from NCAT that your money be refunded to you. NCAT has a limit of $100,000 unless it's a new car. So if you're in dispute with a car dealer and you've got a really, really expensive secondhand car, you might have to go to court. But anyway, most people end up in the tribunal, in NCAT, which is the preferred forum for consumers and traders, because it is one where you don't need a lawyer and you don't have to pay legal costs then if you're not successful. I can't stress enough, though, the need for some sort of expert mechanical evidence to support what you're saying is wrong with your car. That is singularly the biggest problem that people face when they're trying to get a remedy when something's gone wrong with the car, is finding an independent mechanic who can assert that the defect with the vehicle was present when it was sold to you, therefore it wasn't of acceptable quality, therefore you're entitled to get a remedy under the Australian consumer law. You can also take a dispute about a warranty to the tribunal as well. They have the jurisdiction to deal with disputes between consumers and traders if the trader is not complying with the warranty. Now, I'll just segue to if you've got a dispute with a private seller, It may be that the private seller assured you that there was no money owing on the car, and you regrettably didn't do a PPSR search, but took them at their word, entered into a contract with them, the terms of which were, this car is of exceptional quality and there's no money owing. You hand over your money, you take the car is subsequently repossessed by the finance company, or something goes mechanically wrong with the car and you're thinking, well, you know, the seller assured me that it was of excellent quality. You're simply left with suing that private seller in the local court. There's a 6-year time limit to take a dispute to the local court. Depending on how much money is involved, depends on whether you're in the small claims division or the general division of the local court. And again, you will need evidence, principally evidence about what the terms of the contract were, and then evidence about what's gone wrong and what the nature of the breach of the contract is that you're accusing the seller of doing. Yeah, so more complicated, more formal, because it's a court. You can be legally represented. The other side can be legally represented, but that really is your only recourse if it's a private sale.
Thanks, Nerida and John. You've mentioned the tribunals in Queensland and Victoria. I know some people who've wanted a particular car and actually are from New South Wales, but purchased the car in another state. So it's the other state that would be the jurisdiction for that if things go wrong.
Yes, if you entered into the contract and took possession of the vehicle in Queensland, then yes, you may have difficulty arguing that NCAT has jurisdiction, even though you're a resident of New South Wales. But if, yes, you go up to a car dealer in Queensland because that's the car that you want and you sign the paperwork and take possession of it in Queensland, then more likely than not, you'll be in QCAT if you've got a dispute. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. I'm going to ask you for some final takeaways or final comments in a minute. We've got a few questions as well. I think we've got 10 minutes to wrap all that up. Just before we go on to that, I'll just let you know we've been talking about so where you can go for help. Firstly, we've mentioned Law Access New South Wales. So that's a really great place to start. If you've got any of these types of questions, they will talk you through what the issue is, whether it is a private sale or from a licensed dealer, and what your options are. So that's for free legal information. So you can find that on 1300 888 529 or through the Legal Aid New South Wales website. Community legal centres might also be able to help with these matters. So we've got the website there for community legal centres, just www.clcnsw.org.au. And there are community legal centres and legal aids across the country also. Then here is the contact details for New South Wales Fair Trading. So as John explained, if you've got an issue with a dealer or if you have questions, you can contact New South Wales Fair Trading, which is 13 32 20, or their website. You will get an email after the webinar with these links, or if you're watching a recording, in the notes. So if you need further legal help from after this webinar, then we encourage you to do that. Okay. Before we wrap up, before we wrap up, I just want to say thanks for joining us. And there are some further webinars we have coming up on, I guess, sort of related on traffic fines and the law, and mobile phones and the law. So I'll bring that up later. But for now, we do have a few questions, but maybe I'll first ask you both, because this might answer some of the questions. John, on this topic of purchasing secondhand vehicles, what are your top tips for people?
Okay, at the risk of repeating myself, number one would be conduct a PPSR check. Number two would be to make sure you can afford the vehicle you're looking at buying and you don't overcommit yourself financially. Number 3 would be to give serious consideration to getting an independent mechanical inspection done of that vehicle. And number 4 would be sleep on it overnight before you make the decision to sign on the dotted line. Just take one night, talk it over with your family, friends, think about it. The car will still be there tomorrow, but don't commit on the spot, and that will help limit any buyer's remorse, because it's, as we said, it's very difficult to back out of these contracts later on if you've changed your mind, or you realise that maybe you can't really afford that, or the finance provider's interest rate is we've had to go to a different finance provider with a higher interest rate. Yeah, so that'll be the things I'll be urging consumers to think about.
Thanks, John. Good tips. Nerida, what are your final tips or takeaways?
I agree with John. They are excellent tips, and that is really what people need to do. It's very hard, and I know we have had many instances of people living in remote or regional New South Wales and having to travel to Sydney to find vehicles. Sometimes they've found them online and they've come to the car dealership in Sydney, and that just adds a layer of stress because they've driven 6 or 8 hours to Sydney in a friend's car, anticipating that they're going to buy the car in order to drive it home, and they haven't got anywhere to stay in Sydney to pause and have a think about it. Obviously, we only see those people because something has gone terribly wrong. I mean, it's hard, but if you're in that position, maybe factor in having to stay in or around Sydney to really think about the purchase and really look closely at that car before you buy it, because it may not make it back home to Western or Northern New South Wales. And yes, definitely, if you can afford to get an independent mechanical report, do. If you can't, then at a minimum, just go away and think about it and come back before you sign up and take the car with you. And I will just say, look, if you are in a position where you've got a car loan and you could afford it, but your circumstances change and you temporarily can't afford the loan, you've lost your job or you've fallen ill, there are things that you can do with the loan that will enable you to get back on track. And you can call Law Access to get some information or even an appointment with legal aid about hardship arrangements. But definitely agree with those points that John made. And the PPSR search is probably the best thing that you can do, particularly if you're going to buy privately, not from a dealer. Yeah.
Thanks, Nerida. And that segues to one of the questions. So we've had a few questions in advance when people registered, and there's a few questions from today. So, and I think I know what you're going to say to this, but if the PPSR search returns a finding that there is finance owing on the car, what should you do?
Go and find another car is a simple
I
answer
knew you
to
were
that
going to
question.
say that. Okay.
Yeah, unless there's something unique or special, then you'd need to ensure or have the seller prove to you that they'd paid the existing debt out before you took possession of the car and paid for it. But in most cases, I'd be recommending you just walk away and find another vehicle does not have any encumbrance on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We also had a question about if a car is bought at an auction, if a car is bought at auction that is a private seller or a car dealer, is that something NCAT deals with?
Yeah, normally it depends who is selling the vehicle. If it's being sold by a car dealer and it's a business or a company selling the vehicle and you're a consumer, then you may be able to take the dispute to NCAT. It would be about the nature of the contract. But if the auction house is simply a platform to match up a private seller with a buyer, and the person who is selling it, the name on the contract as the seller is just a private individual, then NCAT probably wouldn't have jurisdiction. It just depends who is the seller. Are they a proprietary limited company or a business with an ABN? Yeah, it's confusing because the consumer guarantees about acceptable quality don't apply if it's a sale by auction, even if it's a business or a company selling the vehicle. But if it's a company or a business selling the vehicle and the platform is an auction and you've got some dispute with the terms of the contract, then you should be able to take it to the tribunal to argue about that contract for the purchase of the vehicle.
We've got a question about if someone purchases a car through a dealer and then after buying it, they notice there's some faults. In this example, it's like paint coming off. How do you know if that's going to be treated as a major failure that you can get a refund or repair? Yeah, is there a difference between the type of fault, I suppose?
Yes, essentially. It comes down to whether it's able to be repaired satisfactorily or not. Generally, the definition of a major failure to comply with the consumer guarantee is that it can't be fixed or can't be fixed in a timely manner, or the person would never have bought it in the first place if they were aware of this problem. So it could be that, you know, the cost of repairing it far outweighs the cost of the vehicle. Then that could amount to a major failure to comply with the consumer guarantees, and the consumer is then entitled to say, well, I want a refund, or I want to be compensated for the drop in value of the product, the car. If it is a situation where it can be sufficiently fixed, then it may be a minor failure to comply with the consumer guarantee, and the trader can choose to repair it themselves. They may choose to refund, but they equally might say, well, look, we'll take it and we'll fix it at our expense and give it back to you. Just really depends on the extent of the problem. If the entire vehicle has all its paint coming off, then, you know, that may represent a defect of such degree that it amounts to a major failure to comply with the consumer guarantee, and you can demand a refund.
Thank you. I've just put the screen back on of where to go for help if you've got those particular questions. You can contact Fair Trading or Legal Aid New South Wales. Okay, we're right on 1 o'clock. I think we have answered most of the questions. One person's more given a comment that often buyers are not aware of the PPSR check. So hopefully this webinar is one way of letting people know about that check and the importance of that check. So thank you very, very much for that. And one final check, I guess, to wrap up is I guess it's buyer beware when you're looking at those car sales type websites. If they're private sellers, they're those things we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
Well, so thank
Natalie,
you.
do I have time? I just saw one quick question pop up about NCAT. And the person asked, is it just in relation to cars that NCAT can't deal with private sales? No, it's if someone is just selling something privately, whether it's a furniture, then no, NCAT can't.
NCAT can't deal with that.
No.
And that's so common. Things like, you know, the Facebook Marketplace and eBay, right. You know, it's all so common for private sales these days. So very important information.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Especially thank you to John and Nerida for your expertise today. I think everyone has really learnt lots of valuable information. There's lots of little claps and hearts going on the screen. Thank you to Tyson and Therese for your interpreting today. Hope everyone has a good rest of the week. If you'd like to join us for the other webinars, then please visit the lawweeknsw.org.au website, and we will see you at the next one. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all the people joining from home and libraries. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Natalie.
you.
Bye. Thank
Bye-bye.
you.